Okie dokie. Very warm. Good afternoon. Kia ora to everybody. Sitting here on the 7th of September. Bit of a chilly afternoon here in Auckland, but some really great news for the rest of the country as you're going to track down to level 2 whenever it is, tomorrow, I think. So all of us in Auckland are a little envious, but I think overall happy that we're all heading in the right direction in terms of what has been a rather long lockdown number 4. And so the conversation today becomes really relevant in that context because the discussion today with a fantastic panel is really about talking about building resilience, maintaining well-being through lockdowns for you, your whānau, for the things that you had dreamed about, the things that you had planned, and perhaps things that might have had a little bit of change over this last lockdown. We might go to a quick intro of our panel slide, if we may, Hayley, and delighted today to welcome such a fantastic group of people to share this discussion. I'm not going to introduce them. You'll be able to see their names on slides. In fact, I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves in turn. But this is part of FSC Connect. It is part of our response to supporting members through COVID. So we've been really lucky enough over the last few weeks to run 2 of these programs a week on a range of different topics. The support from amongst the FSC community has been brilliant, so thank you so much. And like with all sessions, this is very interactive. And within the Zoom format, feel free to make some comments, ask some questions, join the discussion, join the conversation. For those of you who are new to Zoom, bottom of your of the bar on your Zoom screen, you'll see a Q&A button or a discussion button. Feel free to use either or both, and we'll be able to, through the discussion, be able to tap into some of those pieces. So look, without further ado, to our awesome panelists of Kathryn, Len, Hamish, Gina, and Clarissa, a very warm welcome. We might go to this the screen view, and rather than me introducing each of the panelists, I'm going to actually invite each of them to introduce themselves, perhaps with who they are, where they're from, and their particular view on this topic, which is the building resilience in lockdown. And I'm going to start, if I may, Kathryn, with yourself. Welcome, and over to you.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Kathryn Darroch, Head of People and Wellbeing. Really excited to be here today talking about a subject that's in my job title. Look, my perspective is that everybody's got mental health, and at times we all sit somewhere along the spectrum. So it's great here to be talking about it as we're heading into Mental Health Awareness Week. But also that resilience is, while really important, is still somewhat understood, and that really, while people think it's about being composed and organised, it's still being, to be resilient is to be quite messy, and really it's about how you process what's going on around you and how you move through that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kathryn. I'm a bit messy, so we might come back to that shortly. Len, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Richard, and kia ora, everybody. It's nice to connect with all of you, and I hope you're keeping well, whichever part of the country you're from. I'm Len Elikhis. I'm the Chief Officer of Product and Vitality at AIA. My perspective on the issue is that a lot of us often spend a lot of our efforts and time thinking about physical health. And indeed, for us as an organisation, that's been a real area of focus. But often we can overlook the fact that there's a really strong connection between our physical well-being as well as our mental well-being. And they're kind of unified under a framework. And so I think part of the conversation is about mental health and resilience. But I think the other part of it is also just the benefits that come holistically to our overall sense of well-being from focusing on those areas. So, yeah, really excited to join the panelists and exploring some of that today.
Awesome. Thanks, Len. Hamish, welcome. Over to you.
Yeah, hi, everyone. My name's Hamish Coleman-Ross, originally from Dunedin, Otago, went to school in Oamaru and have been trying to fit in Auckland for the last 16 years. I'm now passing into that weird array where I might have been in Auckland longer than I was ever in Otago. So I'm kind of grappling with that at the moment. But when I'm not grappling with my identity, the reason I'm here is because for the last 12 years, I've been involved with a radio show called The Nutters Club on Newstalk ZB, originally founded by Mike King back in 2009. I ended up being the stand-in for him for many a time over the first few years, and then in 2015 got given the reins full-time. Over that time, there's probably not that many mental health issues that I haven't had a conversation on air with people, whether it's been our guests that we have in or our multiple callers that we have calling every week. So we're on 11 o'clock on a Sunday night. It's pretty late time, but one of the reasons that we're there is that we know that's when mental health services are at their peak in demand, which is kind of one of those sad things, but I also like the idea that you go where you're needed. When it comes to wellbeing and resilience, I'm a sailor, so I have a pretty practical approach to it all, and the idea that metaphorically and sometimes for me literally, life is like sailing your ship. You're trying to get from A to B, but sometimes you can't always get there in a direct line, so you have to tack from side to side, and it's about having the resilience to be able to keep the ship going forward, but also too understanding what it is that you need to be able to do that. So if I talk in any sailing analogies today, you'll know why. Thanks for having me as part of the panel.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hamish. Gina, over to you.
Kia ora koutou, ko Gina Giulani tōku ingoa. My name is Gina and I am a health promoter and community engagement specialist with the Mental Health Foundation. The Mental Health Foundation is a nationwide charity and health promotion organisation. We advocate for good mental health and wellbeing in New Zealand through our campaigns and education programs. We engage with the community and we also advocate to government for better services for people with mental health issues, things like that. And we also try to eliminate the stigma and discrimination around mental illness. On this topic today of our resilience during the lockdown, I think the main thing for me is that we have inherent skills. We all have skills internally that come out during these stressful times that we can draw on, that we can use to help cope with difficult times. And so it'd be really good to get into a conversation today about some of those skills that you already have that you can draw on to use, and also we can support one another with. So kia ora.
Thanks, Gina. That's awesome. And Hirst, last word to you on this in terms of introducing yourself and your take on this topic.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Kia ora, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name's Hirst, or Clarissa, and I'm the content manager at the FSC. And my role involves helping to grow the financial confidence and wellbeing of Kiwis through content that's targeting consumers. So I work on our consumer communications and projects, and also very closely with our research, including our Financial Resilience Index, which was a really interesting piece of research that we've been doing for a couple of years now, and it tracks Kiwis' financial confidence, their financial preparedness, their job security and feelings of well-being. And we're able to see that the pandemic definitely had an impact on Kiwis' well-being, and also the link between Kiwis' finances and their well-being. Financial well-being is something that I think a lot of people don't really consider within this, I guess, broader concept of well-being, but I think our research shows that it does have a huge impact on us. And so I'm really passionate about trying to build confidence in people and build their knowledge and capabilities so that they have those knowledge and tools to really live a life that they're comfortable with, and also equally very passionate about mental health. Hamish, I loved your analogy, your sailing analogy. I can't relate to that at all, but what I can relate to is I use the hiking analogy. I'm very much into hiking, as Richard knows. I talk about it quite a bit, and the ups and downs of that and the challenges of that. I think I really take with me into my day-to-day life, and it's a very good analogy for the times we're living in right now. So
that's an awesome intro and so much to explore. I thought perhaps maybe we just start off with perhaps a definitional piece, right? Because we talk a lot about, and Gina, I might start with you on this one if I can. We talk a lot about things like wellbeing and resilience, and they all actually, to Len's earlier point, they do mean different things to different people. That's got to be, I assume, okay. We're not going to be religious about what the right definition is, but how do you in your role kind of think about and define it when you're kind of talking to your community groups, for example?
Sure. So, we talk about feeling good and doing well most of the time. So we acknowledge that it doesn't mean that we don't experience tough times or mental illness or mental distress. And it means that we have the tools, the support, and the environments we need to be who we are and to build and sustain lives worth living. I've totally stolen that off the Mental Health Foundation website. But there are two frameworks that we tend to talk about as health promoters when we're talking about mental health and wellbeing in New Zealand. And the two frameworks that we use at Mental Health Foundation, one is Te Whare Tapa Whā, which was conceptualised by Sir Mason Drury. He came up with the four-sided house. And the four sides of the house are your spiritual well-being, your physical well-being, your mental and emotional well-being, and your family and social well-being. And those four things are all interconnected. And if something is lacking, then the house, tilts or is out of balance. So he wanted us to think about well-being in terms of all our parts being in balance. And the other framework we use at Mental Health Foundation to talk about well-being is the 5 ways to wellbeing. A lot of people will have heard us harp on about this. We suggest that people utilise the 5 ways to wellbeing in their daily life. We suggest that they do these things in order to boost their wellbeing. So the 5 ways are connecting, being active, taking notice, keep learning, and give. So yeah, that is kind of my summary of things.
Cool, thanks, Gina. We might come back to the 5 ways a little later on, but Kathryn, can I go to you for this one? I mean, you sit in one of the largest organisations in New Zealand with a kind of role that helps, obviously, the team at Southern Cross and then their clients, your clients, kind of manage some of these things. How does Southern Cross think about wellbeing as it pertains to your staff and broadly then to your clients?
Yes. Oh, thank you, Richard. Yes, for us, wellbeing is really, really broad. It's about creating the conditions to really allow our people to flourish, both mentally and physically. So our program actually covers a really broad range of activities from physical health through to environmental factors, cultural, as well as mental health as well. And we actually even include financial health as part of our wellbeing program. So, yeah, we're using a lot of concepts internally that then we try and feed through into some of our other programs that we offer externally to our corporate customers that they can then use in their programs as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kathryn. Yeah, because it's a challenging one. Len, I might go to you on similar topic because in many ways with, as a large or the largest life insurer, again, trying to get people to think about well-being as it pertains to their health. In other words, to do some things active about it rather than claim, for example. How does AIA think about those issues?
Yeah, so I think probably a good place to start for us is around vitality. So it's a proactive approach to insurance, a program where we use nudges and incentives to motivate behaviour that addresses sort of lifestyle-related challenges that we see sort of both in the population as well as our insurance claims statistic. At the moment, we use a model that we sort of express this as a model called 4490. So there are 4 behavioural choices, so physical activity, nutrition, smoking and drinking, that contribute to 4 lifestyle related diseases or challenges in respiratory illness, heart disease, diabetes and cancer that are responsible for over 90% of deaths in New Zealand. And that's sort of the model that we've used. But as I mentioned in the beginning, there is a very strong body of clinical evidence that links those health outcomes together with good kind of mental health. And so for us at the moment, what we're doing is quite a bit of work to actually expand that model out to incorporate into it mental health. And I really just, if I could, I just really wanted to add to some of the descriptions that Gina and Kathryn gave. I think it is important to distinguish sort of between mental health and mental well-being, which is a term that we use to sort of describe our overall general state of mental health. from, mental illness, which refers sort of to a specific medical condition that people are dealing with. And again, I just wanted to acknowledge the great work of the Mental Health Foundation, which sort of expresses it really nicely as, everyone can enjoy good mental health and well-being, whether or not they're experiencing a diagnosis or symptoms of mental illness.
And Len, have you found, just kind of going, have you found over lockdown 4 and really since the start of lockdown last year, has there been, what's been the experience both within AIA in terms of the community that is the AIA's team, but also the clients that you serve? Have you seen significant changes, significant spikes in certain areas?
Yeah, okay. Well, I might just start with sort of the insurance perspective and just kind of zoom out a little bit to answer that. Like for life insurers like ourselves, we receive claims for mental distress within our income protection portfolio. And by way of background, a lot of those claims that we see really are for mood disorders, for things like depression and anxiety. And to be really clear, what we're talking about there is sort of pretty significant disabling symptoms that prevent people from being able to work. So those are the sorts of, I guess, thresholds for the claims that we see. Interestingly, during 2020, despite the lockdowns, we didn't actually see an increase in claims for mental distress. And in fact, claims actually fell a little bit when we compare it to 2019. And this might sound a little bit unexpected, but there is pretty good research out there which shows that during times of crisis, we tend to support each other and we tend to feel more comfortable asking for help. And we saw some of that play out through increased calls into support services like Lifeline and Depression Helpline, which I think saw about a 25 or a 30% increase in their calls. On sort of the suicide data, which was recently published, we saw that the suicide rate fell by about 6%. Within our own claims data, we track that to roughly a similar level. But if you break down the data and you look at it more closely, you can see that the rate is coming down generally, but there are certain segments where there was actually a pretty significant increase. And one of those segments was actually younger guys, sort of aged between 25 and 40, which saw a pretty sharp increase. So I think, some level of research into this is probably worthwhile to really understand how we can, sort of better serve and better respond and intervene with some of these younger guys that appear to have really struggled last year.
Thanks, Len. We might come back on some of those things as well. But Hamish, if I can go to you, I mean, I guess in many ways, your radio show is a temperature check of lots of things that are going on. What's been your experience over the last 20 months, perhaps compared to previous, in terms of some of the issues being magnified or not through the calls that you get?
Yeah, well, for a start, the show changed its format drastically during lockdown because of the whole level 4 lockdown. The first time round, we weren't actually able to be in a studio with each other. So instantly, we couldn't have guests, which meant that we had to rely solely on callers, which is not something unusual to us. We do that on a pretty regular basis where we just make it about callers. But during the first lockdown, the loud attitude that we had coming through from people was just complete and utter distress, especially from the more vulnerable members of our community. I vividly remember a woman that rang up and she was in tears and she said, "Oh, I'm not so worried about the virus, but this whole lockdown and everything. What happens when we run out of food?" And we then informed her. We said, "Look, we export 80% of what we grow, so don't worry about that." And then it dawned on me, and I asked her a question, and I said, "What kind of access to information have you got at the moment?" And it turned out that she didn't have internet in her home. She didn't own a smartphone. She didn't even have a television. She hadn't had television since it was digitized, and she didn't have a subscription to a newspaper, just a community newspaper, which had been discontinued during that initial lockdown. So all she was getting was our news bulletins, because she wouldn't listen to RNZ because it's government funded, so therefore it's all lies. such as the nature of some callers. But either way, this was a really vulnerable person who was incredibly isolated. This time round, it's been a little bit similar, but obviously we've all done this ride before. And just as recently as this Sunday, we were talking about loneliness and isolation. And I think even for those of us who are living in the bubbles with families and other people, it seems to be the common theme that we're hearing from a lot of people is not feeling as connected to things as they were. And so that to me would be the big issue that we're trying to give people the kind of tools as well as support to be able to tackle this time around. Hamish,
do you reckon we've got better at doing lockdown, given it's kind of our fourth, but probably our second long one?
Well, practice makes perfect for anybody, right? So, I guess, you go into lockdown and you kind of know which shopping essentials you need to get. For some people, I'm sure they still had toilet paper left over from the last time. But does it get easier? You know what? I don't think it does. I think probably this time, because we knew what was going to be expected of us. Last time, it was all kind of in trepidation, right? The first time round, we had no idea what we were in for. So we were all kind of learning together. But I think once the sheen of learning to bake sourdough or clean all the windows in the house kind of wears off, the dull reality of what a lockdown is like for us becomes really apparent. And so I guess that's what we're talking about today is how do we kind of have that resilience to be able to have enough tools in the toolkit to be able to get through it and all the different kind of challenges that it throws up to us that, let's be honest, 24 months ago, probably none of us were thinking about.
Yeah. Just picking up that so many issues, but just that last issue about kind of isolation. We're all in our bubbles. Many of us have to kind of do what we're doing now, and kids might wander in, or kids might be on Zoom school, or pets might be, or maybe there's no one in our bubble and it's just us. Kind of how's that, Gina? I'll go to you in a moment, but Hamish, just last one for you on this topic. How do you think about that, and how do you help when your callers are ringing up in that sort of context?
Well, you know what? You can tell kids to do one thing and they're going to do what they want to do, right, Richard? So I think that's just one of the challenges that we all have to overcome, and I think generally people have been really understanding. But to kind of come to the point of your question, which is more around how do we try and not lose our minds in lockdown, I'll come back to a sailing analogy. It's all about schedule. So when you're sailing long distances, it's really monotonous. You have shifts and people come and they sit and they might be on one particular job, might be on watch, might be on the tiller, and they do that job usually for about maybe 3-4 hours, and then you switch it over. But there's a reason for that. It's not because you're not capable of doing something for 8-10 hours nonstop. Sure, you could do it, but you do get tired. And it's like that in our day-to-day lives as well. So what it is about is creating a schedule which allows you to be able to take all the responsibility that you need to do, but then have that downtime as well. And so I put it in really simple terms, and I'm just saying, look, be kind to yourself. It's great to be kind to everybody else, but make sure that you're also giving yourself those rest periods, because trying to do 10 hours of work because, hey, I saved 2 hours on commuting, so I'll just invest that back into the work that I've got to get in, there for Richard. It's not necessarily going to get the best out of me in this situation. So schedule, routine, these are the things which will get us through and onto the other end and still be ready to get out there and have a good party when we get back into level 2.
Bring on the party. Gina, you were nodding just a little earlier. Just your take on that topic of kind of caring for people around you and kind of being the rock in some cases and architect in other cases, but also kind of trying to deal with your own stuff.
Yeah, I just totally support what Hamish said about routine and making a list of things to do and working your way through it and delineating between work time and break time as much as you can. So when you take a break, power down your computer, walk away from it and go and do something else. And I think because it's quite difficult, we're all working from home. So our work lives and our home lives have become completely mixed up. So it's really important to try and separate your space if you can. Not easy to do. I know I've got a work colleague who's in a 1-bedroom apartment and she's basically working on her bed, and it's difficult. So I acknowledge that it's not easy for everyone. 2 of the groups that I really worry about in this lockdown are single parents, because how do they get a break? And like what we suggest is sometimes is to use your computer, your Zoom, to get your other family members to do a bit of virtual babysitting so that you can just go have 5 minutes to yourself, or let the kids have extended screen time so that they are occupied, so that you can just go sit somewhere else in the house and just have a bit of headspace. So completely acknowledging that single parents are in a really tough space. Also, our people with very severe mental distress who might be living on their own. At the beginning of the lockdown, I heard about some people who are on a drug called clozapine, which needs really close monitoring, with blood testing every week, and their support workers were not able to take them to go and get their blood tests, things like that. I think the Ministry of Health is working through those issues as we bring them to their attention. But yeah, we've got people who are really isolated, who are really unwell, that need our support. So if you do know someone in your neighbourhood and your family network and your workplace network who is living on their own, making that connection, don't expect them to connect to you, because they're going through enough as it is. You need to reach out to them and check on them, and make that effort. So yeah, that's what I would suggest. Kia ora.
Yeah, that's great comment. Thanks, Gina. Riss, we might go to you just on the piece of research that you spoke about, the Financial Resilience Index. It was pretty interesting, wasn't it? There were 2,000 people we surveyed on a range of different things, and we went into the first bit of research not knowing we were about to have a global pandemic. So we almost had ground zero data at the start. Now we've tracked it 4 times. What just highlights, what would have been some of the key findings?
Yeah, it was really interesting and very sort of well timed in hindsight, but obviously didn't know that at the time. It was really interesting, the findings in relation to how financial issues have been impacting Kiwis' well-being. So, I mean, I could throw a few stats around. So, financial issues have impacted our mental health. So 54.6% of Kiwis say that financial issues have impacted their mental health. Over half have also said that they have impacted their relationships with family and friends. It's also impacting physical health. 40% of Kiwis said that financial issues have had an impact on their physical health. So that was quite interesting. And I guess it sort of makes you wonder why is it that financial issues do have such an impact. And I guess there's a number of things that we could throw around there. One other interesting finding is that there's a very clear trend that the younger you are, the more you worry about your money. So 22.6% of us worry about money on a daily basis, which is, I thought, was quite high, but this jumps in the under 37 age group. A lot more people seem to be worrying about money on a daily, weekly or monthly basis, compared to the older generations, who still some people are still worried, but definitely not as much. And so I think that's quite an interesting finding, and I think it's perhaps, and perhaps some of the other panelists can shed some light on this, but I kind of think that perhaps the older you are, the more storms you've weathered in your life, the more experiences you've had, and perhaps that that resilience level is a bit higher, not only in terms of financial well-being, but perhaps overall well-being as well. So yeah, that couple of interesting findings there.
So thanks, Riss. I might pick up and run and perhaps go to Gina first on her take on that kind of connect between financial issues and resilience, mental well-being issues. Is that surprising? Is that stuff you see in your daily work?
Oh, definitely. And I mean, you only have to look at, the price of groceries going up during lockdown, and then the fact that people already don't have a lot of income in some families, and having to cope with the increase in groceries and stuff like that. It's really, really challenging. And the government needs to step in and provide support for families that are really struggling with finances. But even if you're not on the lower end of the scale, everything's just more expensive during lockdown. It's just, yeah, it's a difficult time for everyone, and we're definitely seeing some financial stress. Relationship stress is a really big one. As well. I was reading a report the other day about our Māori communities, and it was surveying them after the other lockdowns before this one, and relationship stress was like the #1 thing for our Māori communities. So, and we know that finances can impact on relationship as well. So, yeah.
Thanks, Gina. Hamish, your thoughts on topic?
Well, I think a lot of the stress for money for people comes from not having knowledge about it. We fear things that we don't understand. And so in other work that I've done through my career, notably when I was working with the Commission for Financial Capability, I found that the more that we were able to actually educate people around just simple things, once you can get some of the concept of compounding interest, sometimes known as the eighth wonder of the world, you can sort of see light bulbs come on for people, and they start to understand the idea of saving isn't just kind of putting money under the mattress. So being able to get financial concepts to people and help them better understand their finances, I found has been really important. But I think that kind of goes for anything. And one of the things I know that our show has done is being able to open up topics for people so that they're not so afraid of it. So if somebody comes to them and says, I'm experiencing psychosis, it's not this, mind-blowing thing that they've never heard about, because they might have heard about it on a radio show, which at least gave them a little bit of insight and some common ground to work on. So my response to kind of what we're talking about here is education for people as much as we can. I mean, how many of us knew about genome sequencing 2 years ago, and now we've all become overnight experts? It's like when the Olympics comes on, everyone becomes a bloody diving expert or starts talking about the form of the 200-metre races. I think it's the same when it comes to tackling that financial stress especially.
Fantastic. And we might dive into the investment conversation in a moment, Riss. But Kathryn, can I go to you just on just picking up something Gina said around, how are big organisations, say like Southern Cross, helping your staff to kind of adapt, noting that this convergence of the personal life and the professional life, how people are set up and taking time out and initiatives that Southern Cross have come up with. Maybe you can just talk to those points.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Richard. We've done a lot of work because we've had to very quickly transition, obviously, to online working. And for us, that's a big change, but one that we've really taken in our stride. And we tried really hard to do things like reducing online meetings, keeping people active. So right now we're doing a step challenge with 40 teams, and some really good work around encouraging people to make sure that they're balancing their home and work life. So we've given them an extra half an hour lunch break. So we've added some extra time back into their days, and really trying to encourage that reduction in online meetings right now, because we know that our minds and our brains are not used to working online. It's quite a transition. It's very different from working in physical meeting rooms. It can be absolutely exhausting, those back-to-back Zoom meetings, and being able to reduce those has been a really big focus for us as well.
Yeah, just picking up that point, I think Gina or Hamish made, just around, there are some people that have become arguably more productive. In other words, they're spending more time doing stuff, but they don't have the, because there's no water cooler conversation to have, and there's no let's go to the coffee shop and have an incidental chat. How do you think about managing that for people who just get so focused on getting stuff done?
Yeah, I've seen that research that says that people do get productive or feel more productive, but what you've got to be careful of is that you don't lose that sense of connection or belonging. And yes, you might be burying away, but actually you can really lose perspective on what we're trying to achieve and where we're going. So we've been implementing agile ways of working, which has a whole lot of sort of ceremonies and stand-ups and connection points. And we've really doubled down on those. So we're focusing not so much on the work we're doing, but actually being together, creating connection, having fun, while doing work, obviously, but just trying to make sure we bring a bit of laughter into our daily lives. So you're seeing a lot more connection points happening on almost a daily basis across teams. And, I've just done a pulse check that's come back today, and you're seeing the results coming back from our staff in that.
Fantastic. Just quick one on your step challenge. What's who's on the most steps right now?
I can't remember the name of the team, but I'll tell you what, it's not my team. We're about 10th. But what I can say is that on average, every person is doing an extra 2,000 steps each as a result of doing the step challenge at the moment.
Fantastic. Yeah. There's some pretty amazing kilometres being walked on the footpaths of New Zealand right now.
Yeah.
Hey, Len, just heading to you for a similar conversation on what AIA is doing, but also mindful that on the call there are a number of financial advisors who are also supporting their customers. How does AIA think about supporting staff, customers, and then your advisor clients as well?
Yeah, look, I think a good starting point is just having empathy and recognising that everybody is impacted by this differently, and I think giving people flexibility around how they work, or in the case of, say, customers, how they can contact you and reach you and work with you. I think that's probably a good starting point. I think the other thing which is really important is just to sort of keep an eye out for trends, and particularly things that that have dropped off or that you're not seeing. So for example, if say there's a team member that you haven't heard from in a little while, I think it's worth reaching out to them and just connecting with them. As Gina mentioned, there are some people naturally who'll be in a vulnerable position, and so whether the clients, if you're an advisor and you've got vulnerable clients that may be doing it tough, or you're concerned that they may be doing it tough, it's worth reaching out. So I think it really is, in these sorts of cases, is really dialing up some of that sort of social awareness and really making time in the day, to kind of stop and focus less on the actual, what you're doing, and more on, the well-being of the people that you care about and that you work with, or, that rely on you.
Just extension to that. I mean, there's how much of this do you think is going to stay with us in terms of how we work? So the remoteness versus face-to-face, the supporting people, the managing the whole person rather than just the work output stuff. How much of this do you think is going to remain, once we are fully vaccinated and much less using lockdowns as our kind of mechanism to fight COVID?
I think there's going to be a permanent change in expectation around flexibility. I think all of us have experienced over the last, probably over the last 12, 18 months, a kind of a change in how we work. And some of that was, outside of our control, like when there were lockdowns, but also as we were then transitioning back into our offices and back into our places of work, a lot of us kind of continued along the path of retaining that flexibility. So I think that's just now become par for the course. It's sort of become standard. And I think what will be really interesting over time is just to see how that, grows and develops. And we talked a little bit about financial well-being, and as Clarissa mentioned, some of the challenges that younger people experience around their financial well-being, and maybe some of that has to do with affordability of living in major city centres. Well, looking back over the last 12 months, I think we've demonstrated, a lot of us, that we can work productively at home, and so there might be an opportunity for people to avail themselves of that. Indeed, in our business, we've actually seen people move outside of the mothership in Auckland and kind of move elsewhere that suits their families. So I think it's with us now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, great. Kathryn, I'm going to ask you the same question, but also just picking up both Gina and Len's point around it's different perhaps depending on your generation and how much support you have, or whether you live at home or whether you have family at home. Do you think Southern Cross is going to return to the way we were, or are you going to bake in some of this, the new way we're working?
No, we've already, from the first round of lockdowns, shifted significantly to a hybrid way of working, and we have seen, like Len, a great shift of people moving out of our major centres into remotely in locations that suit them and their families better, to give them better family support. So ultimately it's good for them and it's good for us, because we get to retain that talent. So yeah, we've generally shifted to a hybrid way of working for all of our people anyway. And that in itself is actually much harder. It presents us with a really big leadership challenge. It's much harder to manage people remotely. You have to use different skills and you have to be a lot more adaptive, but it's a great leadership challenge that we're now rising to.
Isn't it interesting, the things that have come out of COVID that we never knew? I'm just going to head back, Rhys, to you, just picking up Hamish's point around delving into, new areas and becoming experts at diving and what constitutes an Olympic A-grade dive. But with the lens of the other bit of research we did is that people actually had a lot of time in their hands, and we found that lots of people then got into investing, didn't they? In a significant way, which almost feels counterintuitive. You maybe want to share some insights on that, Rhys?
Yeah, it was really interesting. This area of investing, which I guess previously sort of younger people weren't too interested in. Now you've got so many people. Like I've got friends now who were never interested in it before, but like you said, during lockdown, they had time on their hands. They thought, okay, may as well give it a go, and had all these micro investing platforms and like Sharesies and Hatch and all of these that our research showed that people were starting to use them more and more, and also interestingly starting to use them and in order to learn. And so I think that was something really positive to come out of this time. And, when you do have a bit more time, maybe you can devote it towards learning something new. Of course, not everyone has the capacity to do that, and I totally understand that. But we did find that there was an increase in that. And I think to Hamish's point around, it's all about education. If we want to improve wellbeing, then we really have to start by helping people understand these concepts, and a lot of these financial concepts quite filled with jargon, and people don't quite understand what they mean. And I think it's about I think there's a role to be played by the sector, and educating people and lifting their knowledge and equipping them with the tools and the knowledge to actually take action and improve their own financial well-being, which will then in turn boost their overall well-being. So I absolutely concur with Hamish on that it's we need to start getting more people talking about it. It's one of these taboo topics, money, but I think it's starting to become less so, and I really welcome conversations that are happening now around investing, and what so many organisations are doing in that space at the moment, and trying to break down those barriers and educate people. But I think there's definitely more to be done there, and that's part of my job. So
happy days. Thanks, Rhys. Gina, I'm going to go to you in just a moment on the 5 ways or the 5 paths in terms of resilience and wellbeing. But before we do that, just wanted to head back to Hamish. We were talking before we came on screen about, big things that we have planned that kind of got cancelled or deferred. And there's been, there's been loads of things at all ages and stages across the community that, part of life is the looking forward to doing something together with your whānau, with your friends, with your community. Football's big in our household, and, our season has now sadly fallen in a giant big heap, which is immensely sad and disappointing, because highlight of the week for some. But Hamish, how do you think about this change as it's turned up? How to, when big disappointments happen, as they've happened through the last couple of years, what's kind of been the coping mechanism, perhaps in your own life, but certainly in the themes that come through your radio show?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, change is the only constant, right? And so I've come to accept that a long time ago. And I think just to kind of talk about that as an experience, for some people, this is the first time where they've had a hard to find no. Sadly, I had a colleague who had a relationship that ended, just before lockdown, because they were so excited about their plans that they'd been working on, him and his partner, for 2 years, to go international traveling, which are not going to happen anytime soon, at least not on the scale that they anticipated it. But I think what we can do with that is to be able to take those things and find a new focus. And I know that's really, really hard for people, especially when you're so set on what you're going to do. For me, for instance, I'm meant to be getting married in December, which I'm looking forward to. I can't wait. But I've got the stag party in the first weekend of October back in Dunedin, which I'm sure the local authorities have been alerted to. At least if anybody knows anyone, let them know. It'd be havoc. But I'm looking forward to that and going, okay, I'm really looking forward to that. I'm going to do that with 12 of my really good friends. But what happens if it doesn't go? So what I've done is just shift it and make another plan, and just kind of keep doing that. Have something new to look forward to. And kind of laugh at it a bit too. Like, it is absurd that we're all locked in our bloody houses and we're, our kids and our partners are driving us nuts. It is crazy. So just accept it, that we're all in that same boat. I might not get to go to Dunedin on the 8th of October. So what? I'll go another time with some friends. We'll do it next year and we'll laugh about it, but we're going to look forward to it. But I think also too, if you are disappointed about something, and by the way, it's totally fine and understandable to be that way, share it with people. Because look, Richard, your family's got disappointment. I've got some disappointment, potentially. But it's okay to share these things because we are all going through the same experiences. And it's actually when we actually have our common factors, our common experiences that we share with each other and communicate with each other, that we'll realize that we're actually not all that different, and we end up finding those natural supports within our workplaces, especially. And for a lot of us outside of our families, this what we're doing right now, this is probably our next best level of connection. So don't be afraid to talk about the things that are really getting to you, because you're probably not alone.
So how powerful, Hamish, do you think the narrative, the team of 5 million, our ability to coalesce as a nation to fight, if you will, the common enemy? I mean, how powerful has that issue been, and what are some of the lessons that we can then employ, locally?
Well, it depends who you talk to. If you listen to Mike Hosking, who's on the same station that I am, the team of 5 million, I think he's a bit upset because I don't think he got any say in being picked in the first place. So is it important? Yeah, but look, I think the team of 5 million is really broad. I think find your own team, the team of the people who you feel able to speak with, communicate with. I saw a question come up in there and saying, if you need help, who can you talk to outside of calling me on a late Sunday night? 1737 is a really great service. Gina knows exactly what I'm talking about there. So that's a sort of a information hub. They're all trained counsellors, but they can also get you in contact with people around the country. It doesn't sound like a phone number that should work, but it does. And the really cool thing about it too is not everyone in this day and age is a talker. So you can also text that number 1737 for free as well, and they'll communicate through the text. They're a super bunch of people. In fact, one of the guys who's running it, a brilliant man called Dr. David Kodaya, was our original nutcracker on the Nutters Club back in 2009. So yeah, it's great to see people doing the mahi in lots of different places.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hamish. Gina, I'm just going to go back to you. You introduced right up front that kind of mental model of the 5 stages. Can you just kind of take us through those again?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just go through them one at a time and give suggestions as I talk about them. So we've talked a lot about connection on this call today. Connect is one of the 5 ways to wellbeing. We actually have Mental Health Awareness Week is coming up on the 27th of September, and the theme is Take Time to Kōrero. And there'll be some resources and some information with that week about how you can have a chat with people, particularly if you want to have a chat with someone who's distressed. There's some information coming out about how to have a supportive chat with someone who's under stress. Another 5 way is give. It's really difficult to do at the moment because you can't connect with everyone physically and give your time and your energy and your effort to things. You can't volunteer necessarily, although I have noticed online that there are a lot of COVID-19 forums where people are organising to get people their shopping who can't otherwise get their shopping. So maybe if you're in a position to volunteer and you want to, have a look on Facebook for those. Take notice. Take notice is kind of about being mindful and about noticing your environment, maybe looking out the window, having a break, or going outside and finding a piece of grass and taking your shoes and your socks off and connecting with the grass and just filling up your senses a bit. So let's take notice. Keep learning. Next week is Te Reo Māori Language Week. So you might want to take the opportunity to learn some Te Reo Māori. I'm studying it myself, so I've been doing online classes with Te Wananga o Aotearoa, which is really cool. And be active, so you can still go outside. If you can still go outside, do so. Even if it's raining a little bit, take an umbrella, take a jacket, just get some fresh air out of the house. And like I said before, delineate between your work time and your break time. So getting outside is really good if you can. If you can't, have a look online for on YouTube, have a look at yoga instruction, look at different exercise classes that might be on YouTube, or even look at just basic stretches and things that you can do. Also, there's a charity called Changing Minds who are running some free online yoga through what's called the Whakatau Mai session. So look up Changing Minds or Whakatau Mai and you'll be able to see a free yoga class that you can connect with. So yeah.
Fantastic. So it's a very, it's a very deliberate approach, isn't it, in terms of teasing into any of those 5 things that really, if you're sitting there with your family or yourself or your business or your colleagues, all of those things are pretty deliberate and intentional, aren't they?
Yeah. And you could actually add different ways onto it as well, because we like people to think about their sleep habits at this time as well, making sure that you're getting enough sleep and also getting good nutrition, which is not easy for everyone to do. I acknowledge that, but you could add on to the 5 ways with some of the other things that you should be doing in your daily life to keep yourself well. So, got it.
Fantastic. Folks, we've got a few minutes left and it's been a fantastic discussion, and thank you for all the comments that have been coming through. I'm just going to whip around the room and ask the panelists one last question each. First part of the question is, what's been the best thing that's happened to you in lockdown in the last 2 years? What's the thing that's been most fun, most good, most whatever? And the second part of the question is, if we're sitting here in a couple of years' time, what's fundamentally changed about how we work and how we think about kind of coping around this mental health and resilience conversation? And I might, if it's okay, go in inverse order, or I'll just randomly stare at the screen. And Hamish, since I'm looking at you, I might pick on you first if I can.
I knew you were going to come to me first. What's been the best thing that's happened in my lockdown? Do you know what? I think it's actually just been about having more time with my family, not having to sort of rush off in the mornings. Mornings in our household's a pretty busy time, so everyone's trying to get out. I'm getting the bus into the city, and the kids are getting off to school. Vet's a teacher here on the peninsula as well, so she's heading off to get to work, and so everyone's in this big rush, and we're able to actually have more connection with each other. And my kids are at that age now where there's only a few years of that left, and so it's at a really great time. So I've been really thankful for that. Now, as to where we'll be in 2 years and the conversation that we'll be having, I've experienced a lot of challenge in life personally, and I'm sort of happy to say that it was in my younger years, I suppose, because it's not something I'm experiencing right at the moment. But I always think that having gone through sometimes what feels like a dark tunnel and coming out the other side, I think that's really important for us. It's about getting people to the other end of that tunnel that's really, really important, because it grows that thing called resilience, because we figure out while we're going through our journeys what it is that works and also too what it is that doesn't work. And so I think collectively for all of us, for the team of 5 million, that includes my mate Hosking, we'll all come out of this with a hell of a lot more resilience than we had going in. Relationships are going to break over things like, hey, we couldn't go traveling where we wanted to go. but maybe that's indicative that the relationship was built on something a bit flimsy in the first place. So I think that people's values and priorities will become a lot more focused as we go through this journey. And so I hope that when we're talking 2 years from now, we're talking more about how we can help others with our own experience to get through their journey and get to that great place of well-being and resilience.
Brilliant. Thank you, Hamish. Thanks for your overall contribution.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guys.
No, Kathryn, over to you.
I was going to say family, but Hamish has kind of beat me to that. So I'm going to go with healthy habits. So, both working at Southern Cross, it's got some really, really good options and ideas on healthy habits. Over the last wee while, I've been able to adopt, in particular during lockdown, spend some more time on my own healthy habits and getting out there, getting more exercise, and doing some mindful eating and lots of other exciting things that we offer internally to really look after your well-being. So, it's a great opportunity to actually embed those healthy habits and make them part of who I am going forward, and make sure that they continue into whatever life looks like after lockdown. And I guess, did you want to answer the other one at this stage, Richard?
Yeah, sure. You go for it.
Okay. So in 2 years' time, I think given the amount of vulnerable conversations that I'm seeing happening between teams and within teams, discussions going to a new level. Sometimes when you're faced with adversity, that really can build very strong relationships. So I'm seeing lots of vulnerable leaders. I'm seeing lots of vulnerability from our people. And it's been really positive in that people have been able to have a deeper sense of connection. So I think out of this, we're going to see potentially a reduced stigma around mental health and mental illness and deeper connections with people, which will ultimately help us to deliver better outcomes for our customers.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kathryn. Len, over to you.
Yeah, look, I think probably one of the nicer elements has been, to kind of use the expression absence makes the heart grow fonder. I think personally, I found that after these periods of lockdown, to then come and see people in person and spend time with them just gives you a real sense of joy. So I think it's that, on the one hand, while being physically apart from people is really difficult, I think it also, concentrates the mind on what really matters and gives you a real sense of value of that human interaction. In terms of themes in 2 years, look, I think probably, we may still be dealing with this in 2 years' time, and I think there'll be a lot of really interesting questions about how do we open up, how much international travel do we want to do, including for those of us that, work for companies and may travel as part of our roles. We've been able to demonstrate that we can, with some effect, work kind of digitally. So how much of that do we want to embrace versus returning back to where we were? I think, questions about how do we organise our workforces, where are they based, and how do we keep people connected? I think all of that, I think will be the next chapter for us to work through.
Brilliant. Thank you, Len. Riz.
The best thing to happen to me during lockdown was, I probably have to say it's my niece being born yesterday was a highlight. But I guess I think the best thing really has been over the last 18 months or so is really just getting to know myself a bit better. And I think, I won't lie, it's been a very challenging 18 months on the mental health front, but I feel like I've come out of it with a much deeper understanding of myself and the kinds of things that I struggle with, and also the kinds of things I need to do to manage that moving forward. And if something, we go into another lockdown, or life has so many ups and downs, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more of the downs to come, but I feel like this whole experience has really helped me build the resilience that we've been talking so much about to kind of feel more confident moving forward. And you get knocked back, but you always learn something from it. So I think that's been my biggest sort of takeaway, is just really a better understanding of myself and how to cope with challenges. And I'd hope in 2 years' time that actually what this whole experience has done is actually brought us closer together. I'd like to think that we will feel more connected as a result of being so disconnected for so long, and we'll really appreciate the people around us more and those relationships that we have, those people around us, and be a bit more resilient overall.
Wow. Thank you, Rhys. That is awesome. And last word, Gina, to you.
Sure. Well, I guess we eat better and we shop smarter during lockdown, so that's always good. And both me and my partner, we tend to travel for our jobs, so in some ways this is a good little break to stop traveling and just to spend time with each other. So I've really appreciated that. I think generally my mental health and wellbeing has improved through work flexibility as well, ongoing. So we're allowed to work from home on Mondays and Fridays, and that's really good because I'm really distractible and really talkative and stuff at work, and I'm not as productive when I'm at work. And so having Mondays and Fridays to sit down and do all my reading and my writing has really helped my work performance. And I got a promotion last week, so yeah. That was good. So doing well on the work front, but yeah, just lots of love and support to everyone out there that is struggling during this time. It's not an easy time, and we just acknowledge that, and anything that we can do to help. We put lots of information and resources out there on the internet if you do have access, and if people don't have access, I guess pass that information on through your conversations and stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of the next 2 years, well, yeah, I miss international travel. My partner's Kiwi Italian, and we can't go to Italy, and we can't go to Melbourne, where we like to spend time on our holidays as well. So that's been quite difficult. So my hope is that eventually the borders will open, but I guess only if the vaccination rates go up, right? So yeah, we'll just see how that pans out.
That's an awesome panel, folks. We're at 4:32, so it's just my role to close by saying two things. One, a huge thank you to our just fabulous panel for being so articulate and personal and expert on the particular topic. I'm hoping that second thank you is to everyone who's watching, and that you've picked up some guidance and some tips and been stimulated on the topic of the day. Certainly been brilliant having this conversation, and for mine, put a lot of stuff in perspective. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we will be sharing this podcast, if you will, or this Zoomcast on social, and it'll go live probably later in the week. For the rest of it, take care, everyone. Hope to get out of lockdown in Auckland ASAP. To everyone out of Auckland, enjoy your freedom with your resilience, your bushwalks and your fab coffees. Thanks, everyone, and have a great afternoon. Ciao for now.